YouTubers, what's going on? It's the Dirty Harry back for part 2 of CM Punk fantasy booking. This time I'm gonna do Punk versus Kofi Kingston. Uh, Initially I was a bit worried about even trying to do this one just because Kofi on the mic is kind of like, but I have a way to pull this beef off, and bear with me. So it all starts with AJ. She brings her like little niece to Raw. I'm talking like a little fucking kid, like 6-7 years old. She comes to Raw. She's just starstruck, all the wrestlers around her and whatnot. And she's wearing that CM Punk T-shirt because he's a huge fan of Punk's and all that. So we see AJ. She gets called to her office to take a call or something like that, and she leaves her niece with Kofi, who's like the one guy around at the time. So Kofi, he gets told to look after her niece, but the niece is like, I want to see Punk. I want to see Punk. You're his friend. I know y'all, ride together. So, he takes her to the tour bus to see Punk. And Punk, he sees her and he's fucking cranky as fuck, being a jerk and all that. And once he finds out it's AJ's niece, he turns to a complete asshole to her. He's a total dick. He goes off on Kofi for bringing her there. He's like, fuck AJ, she don't respect me. I'm the champ. She don't respect me. This girl's as obnoxious as she is. And Kofi's like, dude, take it easy, man. It's a little kid, bro. And then Punk goes off on Kofi, and Kofi goes back at Punk, and we see the friendship, it just starts to deteriorate. So Punk, he gets Kofi off his bus, and Kofi's pissed, and he takes the niece back to AJ. So the niece's like, I hate Punk now, this is mean, blah, 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 blah. They walk past a little shopping cart in the arena, and she buys a Kofi shirt saying, she's friends with Kofi now, And so Kofi's like, whatever, he takes the kid back to AJ, and AJ sees the T-shirt, and is like, what happened, and she basically snitches on Punk, and Punk was mean to her and all this shit. So then AJ gets pissed at Punk, so she was like, well, your new favorite wrestler, she's like, it's Kofi. So she's like, okay, your new favorite wrestler's gonna fight CM Punk and get revenge tonight. And Kofi's like, what, So, Kofi versus Punk gets booked as a non-title match. And Punk hears about it, and he gets pissed, he's like, what the fuck, So he finds Kofi backstage, and he calls Kofi a backstabber. He goes on this big rant about how their whole friendship was a big conspiracy so Kofi could get a title shot. And Kofi's like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I'm just doing my job, man. And Punk just keeps going off on him. And you see Kofi, he just stands up for himself. He's like, I'm gonna win tonight, just to shut you up once and for all, man. So the match happens, they bring AJ's niece to the announcer's table. She has to sit with the king and talks about kitty things, why Kofi's her friend and all that. And the match ends as an upset. Like, you see Kofi actually cleanly beats Punk with, like, I guess it's a roll-up or something. And Punk is just shocked, like, oh my God. He just thinks about it, walks away. So AJ's niece, she gets to the ring, she celebrates with Kofi. Kofi looks to Punk, and he's like, he tries to bury the beef. He's like, look, man, this ain't no beef, man, And he's like, look, man, me and Punk, we've been friends a long time, man. He tries to reach out and shake his hand, and Punk, he thinks about it. He's like, yeah, gets ready to shake his hand. AJ comes out in the middle, right before they do it, and it's like, hey, Kofi, you just beat the champ, so I guess that makes you the number one contender. And Punk is like, calls him a backstabbing asshole and walks out and refuses to shake Kofi's hand. So after that, we see a Twitter beef start between the two of them. They start going off on each other on Twitter, for all the IWC, is it real? And then next week, you see Punk come out, he explains why he couldn't shake Kofi's hand and how he's the champ, everyone's gunning for him, and now his best friend's using the GM to get the gold for himself. And it, he pisses him off. Kofi comes out, he cuts a promo saying that the belt's the holy grail of the business, So he's always wanted it, but he's not using AJ to get it, He said he still respects Punk as a friend, and he wants to bury the beef, He said he just wants to have the title match and do his best to win it, because he's wanted it, just as bad as Punk does. Punk agrees, but he still doesn't really trust him. So AJ comes out, she apologizes for how bad the situation looks to Punk. So she hires a marriage counselor for Kofi and Punk to go talk to that night. Yeah, it's a bit of a silly skit, but I think that, sometimes a humor skit is always good, especially for this type of beef. So Punk and Kofi, they look at each other like, what the fuck, and we see them argue with each other with the marriage counselor, share their feelings and all this shit. And it's supposed to be a hilarious segment above all else, And they walk out, they're feeling like, wow, that shit works. And then they see Kane and Daniel Bryan hugging it out. And Kofi looks at Punk. And Punk's like, don't even fucking think about it, man. But he was really staring at the goal, he's just staring at it, like, at the goal. And Punk gets pissed and walks off because he really doesn't trust Kofi again, So then Punk finds out he has a match one night and Kofi doesn't. And he's pissed. He's like, AJ showing favoritism, blah, blah, blah. He goes on this rant, and Otunga pops up. He said, he can help Punk out, And Punk's like, nah, man, he'll beat Kofi because he's better. So the big match happens on Raw. Kofi and Punk for the belt. And we see Kofi come real close to winning the gold. They get into a brawl outside the ring. This is how the match ends. They're duking it out outside the ring, and Kofi just beating the hell out of Punk. We see Punk, thumb him in the eye and run to the ring right before the 10 count. He gets in the 9. Kofi gets to the ring, and as soon as he gets ready to climb in, we see a hand come from under the ring and grab Kofi's butt and hold him down. And the ref counts to 10, and Kofi just goes berserk and goes under the ring. And Punk's, like, what the fuck is going on? And we see Kofi, he chases someone in a ski mask out the arena and whatnot. And so Punk and Kofi, they're like, what the fuck just happened, And they can do this big investigation, who screwed Kofi. And Punk admits, hey, Kofi almost beat him. So Kofi says he wants a rematch. And Punk's like, yeah, you got it, So Kofi, he's, still fucking with Punk. Like, what do you think would have happened if I made it in that ring, But anyway, later on, surveillance footage from the arena, pops up. And it shows the back of someone's head putting on a ski mask and going under the ring and all that. And we see Hornswoggle on the camera getting thrown out from under the ring. So Kofi finds Hornswoggle. Like, who did it? Who did it? But Hornswoggle can't talk. Remember. So Kofi basically is like, well, point him out. He walks around the arena for the whole episode with Hornswoggle trying to find this guy, basically. He asks Hornswoggle who did it. And like midway through the show, he points out the person who did it. It's like some indie talent guy who's FCW or something that they're going to bring up. So Kofi chases this dude around the arena and corners him, and he beats the truth out the guy. He's like, who the fuck is, He's like, they made me do it. They said they give me a match on TV. They made me do it. And then when Kofi asks, well, who's they? He tells him Alberto Del Rio paid him to do it. So Kofi calls out Del Rio and asks why. And Del Rio comes out. He's jealous of Kofi gets the spotlight just because Punk's your friend. It's my destiny to hold the gold and all this. So he challenges Kofi for his number 1 contender status. Kofi accepts it. He wants revenge. But that night, Kofi loses to Del Rio. He loses the number 1 contention to Del Rio. He's going for the Trouble in Paradise, and the ref's about to count the 3. He gets the 2 count, and the referee just fucking collapses like he's having a seizure or some shit. So Kofi's like, what the fuck? He calls the EMTs and shit. They roll him, medical people out there, and Del Rio, he sneaks up on him, puts a cross arm breaker on him, and he's tapping out, and the referee mysteriously recovers, and he's okay. He gives Del Rio the match, and backstage, we see Ricardo with the referee giving him an envelope. So as soon as the referee turns the corner, he bumps into Punk, and Punk takes the envelope and sees a big wad of money. So he turns the ref into AJ, gets him fired, and she overturns the decision. So Del Rio, he goes to Otunga for legal advice, But Otunga says AJ's the GM, it's her show, there's not much you can do. So Kofi gets a rematch with Del Rio with Punk as the referee. That's how AJ settles it. Punk calls the match fairly, but later on in the match we see an argument break out between Punk and Del Rio, which leads to Punk, he goes for a kick on Del Rio and hits Kofi. So Kofi gets back up and he and Punk go at it, and the match ends with Punk, he GTS's both of them, just walks out of the match, which ends the match in the draw. So AJ's pissed, why did you walk out, Punk? He didn't even fix the situation at all. And Punk goes off on AJ saying she's the one scheming and conniving and putting everyone against him, and they just playing innocent. So we see Punk, he gets on the phone with Colt Cabana saying, that's the only real friend he's got who's not trying to take him out. It's a quick call. So AJ comes out, she announces her decision to the number 1 contendership. But first you can make an announcement. Some random from the locker room, maybe Heath Slater or something, comes out and demands a shot. She's like, well, you just handed out shots to everyone, I want one. So she books out like a gauntlet type battle royal for anyone interested in it. It's kind of like a Royal Rumble, but you only eliminate with pinfall and submission, and a max number of guys in the ring at a time is 4. So the final 4 of the match, Kofi and Del Rio obviously, and maybe Super Cena and Orton. AJ comes out and is like, well, the winner of the next fall gets the number 1 contention, so it turns into a fatal 4-way at the end. Punk comes out, sits at the announce table, makes sure nothing funny is about to happen, And man, oh man. So Kofi wins the match, becomes the number 1 contender, and the feud with Punk continues. We see Del Rio complaining, for a week about it should be him facing Punk and all that. So Otunga comes out to the ring before the big Kofi and Punk title match is about to happen, the big rematch. And he says, well, AJ's a failure as a GM because she shows favoritism to Kofi, and he says he's got evidence. And we see some dude dressed in a suit with Otunga, He's like a member of the board of directors. He said, yeah, he's looked at the evidence. And as a member of the board, he calls the match off, like right there. And so they later showed, the evidence with AJ sitting down with the board of directors guy and all that. They got pictures of Kofi being with her niece that night, buying her ice cream and all that. And then he pulls out the record books, of all the matches and all that, and he reads the stipulation for the last week Battle Royal. And he's like, yeah, it says the winner's supposed to be the number one contender, but the record book got altered, and it says Del Rio won. Del Rio paid someone to alter the record book, basically. And AJ goes on this big rant and looks at the suit guy like, do you even watch the show, man? And he's all snobbish and shit. Calls her a terrible GM, and he discusses it with the board. So Kofi goes to Del Rio, demands that they sell the beef once and for all. Del Rio just laughs. I'm like, dude, I've already won, man. I'm not gonna fight you. I already won, man. I already got my title shot, So the next week, AJ gets temporarily relieved of her duties by the board members, and they give the control to Otunga because he had great integrity on bringing it to their attention. So Del Rio gets all hyped up, like, yeah, I'm getting my match tonight. So he goes out to the ring, waiting on his match, and then Otunga comes out smiling. He's like, hey, Del Rio, it's been a change of plans, man. So he books Kofi versus Del Rio, and Kofi just beats the dog shit out of Del Rio. And then Otunga books himself to face Punk for the title that night. And then he stacks the deck against Punk. He bans the GTS and the Anaconda Vice. He makes it so that he cannot be disqualified. It's no DQ only for Otunga. And if Punk gets DQ'd, he'll still lose the title. And he bans everyone from ringside. So we see a heel jobber, attack Punk backstage, and Punk basically owns the guy. But before Punk gets away, he gets his elbow gets injured. So Otunga books the attacker in the Intercontinental title match for the next week as a reward, for helping him out. So Otunga comes out, he's against an injured Punk, Otunga, he beats on Punk pretty bad. And Kofi's like, fuck this shit, He comes down to the ring when the referee's knocked out or whatever, and he hits the Trouble in Paradise on Otunga and saves the belt for Punk. Punk wins with the help of Kofi. The ref didn't see a thing, so Punk didn't get DQ'd. So Otunga, gets back up. He suspends Kofi for interfering, and then he orders the match to get restarted right there. As soon as he turns around, Punk takes him down and finishes it off with a Pepsi plunge. He goes old school to take out Otunga. So we see Triple H, the COO, come out at the end of the show. He suspends both Otunga and Del Rio for what they did and reinstates AJ. And the match, Punk versus Kofi, gets booked for 2 weeks later to give Punk time to recover, and Kofi's suspension gets lifted. The next week on Raw, we see Punk and Kofi, they're showing respect to each other and all that. They cut interviews on the internet about how they feel about the match and all that. Start of the next Raw, the WWE title gets stolen out of Punk's locker room. Del Rio's not in the arena, and neither is Otunga. So once again, they use the magic of surveillance footage, and they see Kofi, last person seen going into Punk's locker room. And Kofi's like, man, I was just looking for you to show respect about our friendship and all that. Punk gets pissed, doesn't believe Kofi. He's like, I know you did it. Why are you doing this shit, And Kofi's like, dude, I got a title match tonight. Why would I steal it, So later on through the night, we see that the footage was actually cut after Kofi went inside. The camera just died. So they went to this, who's running security of the show. So they call a security guard, and they learned Del Rio once again paid someone to take the title. And so we see Del Rio at a fancy hotel eating dinner with like a real hot chick, bragging about how he's gonna be the champion. And you see Ricardo standing up holding the WWE title. So AJ Punk and Kofi, they interrupt the dinner. AJ threatens to, fire Del Rio and just do all this shit to him if he doesn't, give her the title back. And Del Rio's like, I was never in the arena, so I honored my suspension, and I'm not the one holding that belt. That's Ricardo. And that title, I bought that on Shop Zone. So Punk, like, he doesn't buy it. He gets ready to, take out Del Rio, but Del Rio's got bodyguards and all that. And he's like, I'm going to sue you if you keep trying to harass me. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. So Punk's like, all right, I got something for you. So the next week, we see the big new WWE title that we've been seeing on the internet, whatever it really looks like. Punk comes out with like, well, this is the new title now, So he and Kofi had their match for the new title. They go at it. Punk wins the match cleanly. He apologizes for doubting Kofi's friendship, but goes on to say, man, we can't be friends no more because we're rivals now. They shake hands, leave the ring, and that ends the first part of the feud. Later we see Del Rio come back after his suspension. He's wearing the old belt that he claims he bought off Shop Zone, and this sets up the Punk Del Rio feud. And that's all I got for Kofi. I really just want to see Kofi in main events again. I think, adding AJ to the beef, if Punk ever gets booked with someone who just doesn't have good mic skills or can't carry it, you just add AJ to it, and it just really works. So that's another fantasy booking. Love each other.